Welcome to Designing Hollywood. I'm your host, Phillip Boutté, and thank you so much for joining us. Our guest today is extraordinary, but not in the way that you would think. She is a multi-Emmy award winner. She's won a bundle of Costume Designers Guild Awards, and she's added the title of producer to her repertoire. But none of these things are what make her extraordinary. To know her is to feel special, respected, included, trusted, and supported. This sentiment is something that all that are lucky enough to work with her echo. She is extraordinary because she encapsulates the definition of the best parts of the human condition. Some of her credits include Nip Tuck, Glee, Scream Queens, Pose, American Horror Story, and the upcoming Ratched. Let's give a warm welcome to my friend, costume designer, producer, Lou Eyrich.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, Lou.
No, this is awesome, and it's fun because we worked together before, but not in the same room.
Completely, yeah, always remotely.
I'm always like calling him, help.
So let's get the boring question out of the way, which is just, how did you get your start in the industry, or like what brought you to this?
Oh yeah, I feel like I've gone over. I hope it doesn't bore anybody. I'm from Minnesota, and had no clue that there was any such thing, even as the entertainment business, other than the television that we watched. And was working my way through college at a vintage store, and it just like really sparked a love of vintage. So I started my own quite extensive collection, and I waited tables in a bar, and then there was a band playing, and there was a lighting designer named Stan Crocker, and he and I just hit it off, really great friends. But then became my boyfriend, and him and I would do display windows together, and he would do these great elaborate light, like strobe lights and all this, and we would collaborate on these fun windows. And he toured with bands, and I would go meet him out on the road, and a couple of the bands had stylists, and I didn't know that bands had stylists. And so during sound check or a long day, I would go hang out with the wardrobe stylist. At the time, they were called stylists, I guess. And I would iron or sew or whatever they needed. And so one of the bands was the Manhattan Transfer, and Eileen Lasitri was the stylist wardrobe goddess. And we just also hit it off, and she taught me so much about that world. And she also did like Chrissy Hine and the Pretenders and Kiss, and so she had been touring for years, and really took me under her wing. And then she introduced me to Helen Hyatt, who was the designer for Prince. And then so when I was back in Minneapolis, Helen needed help on the movie Graffiti Bridge, so I got to segue onto that. And then that led to touring for a couple years with Prince, and then also Bette Midler. And so it just kind of steamrolled from meeting Stan to him introducing me to that world, and then it rolled into being back in Minneapolis and wanting to try film. And that's when Carol Ramsey rolled into town with a movie called The Bridge. And I begged her to hire me as a PA, and so I kind of PA'd for her. But I knew Minneapolis really well, and I knew vintage really well. And it was a period show, so I was able to just jump in and help more than get her coffee and take care of her kid, which I would have gladly have done. And I learned so much from her team. We're very generous with their time, and that's where I really got bitten. And then my now husband, Robert Schwartz, is a producer, and he was doing several movies in Minneapolis as well that I got to jump on and really learn my chops before I ended up here in LA. And the rest is history.
Was there in that time, was there like a moment or a spark or anything where you were just like, this is what I want to do for a living? Or do you feel like it was just kind of a gradual, organic kind of?
It was watching Carol Ramsey work.
Okay.
It was getting to get in that position and watch how, like, she's got a really brilliant way of working. Like, she's super into research, and she taught me that that's a very important part. But she's very good with character. And I loved watching how her whole process, and so I'd be sizing shoes over here, but
like really watching what she was doing right.
She's just the real deal, and again, was incredibly kind and generous to helping me out. But she's also the kind of designer who really, she just sees the whole picture of her crew. Like, she knows what's going on over here. Like, she always knew where she was on the budget, which always impressed me. And still today, where you'll be on a big show and I'll ask the supervisor where we're at, and they're just like, that doesn't have to concern you. I'm like, but it does. 'Cause
Yeah, like it's a part of my job. Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't let it go. But no, and so Carol is still my hero. I just love her.
I love that too, and I love hearing the connections, because sometimes I don't know these. Like, I know Carol and I know you, but I didn't know that you guys, that I didn't know that story.
I assisted her for. I have to look. I have a bad memory. Any of those who work for me out there know. They're like, yeah, she has a bad memory. I think it was 6 or 8 years that I assisted her.
Now,
I still call her once in a while and ask her to take me back.
like, just like, take me back, please. Like, do you feel? What I'm hearing from this, and actually, this is actually good for our listeners, is that you got a lot of your job training on the job itself. Like, you didn't.
I didn't
you
go
didn't
to
train.
school. No. I would, in hindsight, if I could turn back the clock, I would definitely go back. I'd love to learn illustrating, especially.
Mm-hmm.
I think would be important, even though, I can you can get apps now and you can do it on your iPad or whatever. I still would love to learn, like, how do you take a croquis? How do you do the body dimensions and stuff? I can get by and then give it to you and say something like this, but much better.
Yeah. I think sometimes that's great, though, because I think the drawing for function, or just the kind of like to communicate, is a tool. But definitely we need to talk about this, because I want to get you on like your iPad or Procreate or something and just drawing, because I think you would have just an amazing time with it.
We'll do a barter system.
Yeah.
I'm in.
I wanted to ask this and kind of talk about the projects, which is your projects span several different genres, and sometimes one show can house multiple categories. So like sci-fi, contemporary, period. Can you speak to this and how you kind of pull that together, or how you keep it straight?
Yeah, so, I mean, getting inside the mind of Ryan Murphy is really impossible. But he does, the hardest part of my job is keeping up with him, because he just moves at this clip, and he has all these ideas in his head, and he'll throw them out, and you take those nuggets and you do boards, and you try to figure out that some kind of a system that will tell the story that he is looking for. And so in one show we'll have, trying to think of an example, God, you caught me off guard on that one. On American Horror Story, let's see, 4 or 5, there was, let's say, hotel. It took place contemporary, so you had Gaga dressed contemporary, but she was 100 years old, and everybody that died in the hotel, it was the 90s, but yet there were ghosts that were living in the hotel that were from the 20s. So it was, and earlier. So it's doing the characters in each period. And then there was a sci-fi element in one of them, but I don't remember. There was aliens in one, and this was episode or season 2 maybe. But it is hard on episodic TV, because it's you don't get that script until a couple days before, so you don't know there's going to be that arc, whereas in a movie you get the whole script, and you'll say in the beginning, like, okay, that doesn't shoot for 6 months, but it is there. On a TV show, episodic mostly, you get maybe your first 2 episodes, and then all of a sudden 6 comes, you're like, what? Yeah,
like, wait, what's happening? Do you have to plant yourself, like, if they just throw you like aliens or something, if they're throwing you like someone from, you've been working in the 90s and now they throw you something in the 20s, are you just going and doing a full burst of research, or like how are you getting your mind to switch between those things?
Unfortunately, we don't really have the pace to do a full research, but we're so lucky with the internet now. It used to be like run to Western to the research library, but now you can look it up. But normally it is a specific enough thing where we can do a quick research on it. But like on Scream Queens, which was contemporary and like really heightened reality of fashion and style for these young girls, but yet I had to do a Red Devil, and I had never done creatures before, and that's why I enlisted you to
Yes.
help me as the concept artist and illustrator. Like literally, I went to you and okay, here's like a bunch of research. Can you help me put this together? Which you did, but we're going to address that.
Yeah,
later. I
no.
jumped ahead.
Yeah, no problem.
There we go. So it had to be so functional because there was a lot of stunts and et cetera. And you helped me really figure out how to do that. And you had a lot of experience in it as well. But you know how they can breathe in this mask and how it can come off easily, but yet look scary and real. And
there was a mood to it too. I remember you sending me a bunch of research, vintage research of like vintage devils, which I had never really seen before myself. And I thought that was so fascinating, kind of the shape language that they had and the simplicity.
Yeah, and Ryan does love all of those elements brought into something new. And wanted the cape, we had to build it in a lot of different gores because he really wanted it to flow and move and be shiny. And when he moved, it was just this liquid moving fabric. And I'm sorry I jumped ahead on.
No, that's okay. Not a problem.
But that's a good example of where it was contemporary. But then I had to throw in this creature, which is what designers at Marvel do all the time. But I hadn't done it.
See, what was fun about this too is that, well, first off, do you like sci-fi? Do you want to do more sci-fi?
It's not that I dislike it, but it is not an interest of
yes,
mine.
Okay.
But I love how others do it, and I'm in awe. But it's not my thing.
What I loved about this one is that it felt like you were taking the experiences and all the things that you love, and you kind of applied them to this kind of new challenge, because I know a lot of the times with like creature stuff or things that are conceptual in this nature, they tend to get a little overcomplicated. And what I liked was that you consistently brought it back into a vintage kind of, it felt classic. Like I felt like that devil design can go forward without being dated because you were able to simplify it in the best possible way.
And also, if you remember, Ryan wanted to make sure you couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman.
Correct. I forgot about that. That's right.
And the reason it wasn't a full suit is it had to be like, it could have been somebody on the campus dressing like
right.
the devil. So it was kind of like a lot of different elements by the time we ended up with something close to this. I think we have the real picture later of what it turned out.
What it turned out to be, right. There's a there was an element of it that I felt like it kind of continued to kind of go. I know you said that you had talked about the capes. Can you explain that? Like when you're talking about different fabrics of capes, so it moves differently depending on what they're doing, or
no? We ended up with one cape, but as anybody who builds specialty costumes, it's one fabric that has to do a lot of things. So it takes you a long time to kind of end up with that fabric, which is what happened on Ratched as well with the nurses' dresses, is like you do so many prototypes because it's supposed to do a specific thing. But like this one, in order to get the collar to stand and fit nicely with the back of the mask that was being designed by somebody else, and then to not build it out so structurally that it could not be a woman. And then the fabric wanted it to be liquid but not satin because it's not a vampire. And it's like, it just finally ended up with I can't even remember anymore because this was
it's just so long ago. Yeah.
But I remember even, the name of the lovely people who built it. They did such a great job. Isn't that horrible? I'm going to look it up so that we can include it because they were great. That building it into the different gores. And Susan Anderson was our fabulous fabricator, our specialty costumer on that. It took many renditions to get it to where it wasn't so heavy, where it didn't pull the collar down, where it could have these great swoops and moves, but could be made quickly for all the different bodies that were wearing it.
Well, you also brought up something that I wanted to talk to you about in this, which was you brought up Ratched. So let's talk about Ratched. Give me some what you
nuggets.
can. Yeah, some nuggets. What you can say about Ratched.
Well, it airs in 3 days, and let's see, what can I say about it? It was one of my favorite things to ever work on because it had a lot of different layers. It was 40s, which I love, and it was film noir. So, but I mean, that said, we didn't always copy the 1947 accurately. We would take a little poetic license with it, especially with the color palette and fabrics. So, I mean, the cast was delicious, and it's a story about, well, so many things, but female empowerment for one, and there was so many great female actresses in it. But what can I say? Designing the hospital staff with Ryan took weeks upon weeks because he didn't want to do the traditional white uniforms like
That's what I was
One
going to ask
Flew
you
Over the
about was
Cuckoo's
color.
Nest, because
Yeah.
this is the prequel too. So the hospital was supposed to be kind of, it took over an old spa, so it had a kind of a feeling of a rehabilitation center,
Right.
Psychiatric rehabilitation center. So he wanted a little bit of color and definitely movement. Like he wanted the fabric to all have, so when the nurses were walking down the hall, you got movement. And we fluctuated between blues and greens, and we worked closely with Judy Becker, the fabulous production designer, and what her sets were going to be so that the color really stood out with the rest of the surroundings. So it really caught your eye. And then finding all the different tones of green that could work on the orderlies and the hospitals and the gowns and the lab coats, and so everything had a different shade.
That's what I was going to say.
So-
Even in the trailer, when we watched it, I saw the different shades, and I was like, sometimes one of the hardest things that I find is doing like tone on tone stuff, like different shades of
Yeah.
one color. But it looked really beautiful. And then the contrasting color, like I think you had someone with like green gloves and then dressed in black, like or something.
Yeah, and I mean, it was really hard to, like, we joked afterwards, like, we hope we don't ever see green for a while, because there was a lot of green. Green stood for jealousy, envy, greed,
Awesome.
had a lot of definitions, so we would pepper it in when needed. So, like, when Sharon Stone shows up at the hotel in her green gown with the monkey in the green dress. And in the hospital, like the orderlies, we really struggled with because putting men in those colors just felt so awkward. But when you got it all together, it worked.
It worked
But
out.
It was kind of like, thanks.
No problem. I think that the color palettes, I think that that's one of the more striking things, and also the silhouettes. You brought up something else, too, that I just want to jump back to really quickly, which was you were talking about how you kind of took liberty within the period. I think that's something that people don't recognize often is like if you're doing 40s, you can play in the 40s, but then you can also play in any of the time periods that happened before because people keep their clothes.
Yes.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's something that people miss. Did you do a little bit of that, too? And then...
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people who do period do exercise that because it's not, they didn't have fast fashion like we have now, where you can run to H&M and in 4 months it's already
Right.
not trending anymore. But there you have a small closet and you wear it for years and years, especially right around the war period like that. During the war, everything was rationed and you weren't really buying new clothes, and it did backdate quite a bit, and kids' clothes were handed down in the family and neighbors and everything else. But and Nurse Ratched, well, Mildred Ratched did arrive at the hotel with just her 2 small suitcases.
Right.
So we did reuse quite a bit, and she had a very small wardrobe.
Okay.
So we did stick to that. But it does show that she steals her clothing. So like she uses those. She dresses for the occasion, so she knew that she had to have that suit to walk into that hospital and start her career as a nurse there at that hospital at Lucia.
Okay, so now I think I want to dive into process a little bit because I want to talk about, because you're working on all these projects and you're kind of setting them up and each one kind of has its own kind of creative anchor. How do you start a project? Like what's your mindset? Like you get your scripts, you talk to Ryan, like you guys are starting to do the stuff. How do you start the process of starting a new show?
Well, it depends if I'm co-designing it, if I'm starting it up and leaving, or if it's going to be me there the whole time. But we get a meeting with Ryan, and he already knows the tone, the style. He's already met with the production designer. If we're not really busy, we all meet in a room. Hair, makeup, costumes, production designer. We all like meet the DP, everybody, and Ryan will go through all his references, the movies, the photographers, furniture designers, and he throws out all of his own inspiration for the project, and then we all go and do our own thing and come back with our boards and show him. But when he's doing like 6 at a time, it gets a little bit more complicated. I try to just like truncate it a bit, but like any designer, I love digging into the research of the project, and it could be a color of a flower. It could be, street style. Somebody walks by and like, oh, I love his style, her style, or that hat, and it could just trigger that, like, oh, he could always wear that hat. Like I go by character more than, like sometimes it's in the script and you read it, but other times it's kind of like intuition, like, oh, he's this or that. But what gets tricky on a Ryan show is half the time, like, say, Evan Peters or Sarah Paulson. Or I've now worked with them on 9 American Horror Stories for 9 different characters. So how can we make this person look like we haven't done before? That's where the tricky part gets. And so that's where it's where really you might not find that research out there somewhere. And so then, that's where I use my relationship with them and we sit down and talk about it. And they all have great ideas. I love Evan Peters' scripts are always like completely like mangled and everything written all over.
Notes all over and everything.
He's a great collaborator, and Sarah Paulson as well. And
well, can you speak to that? Speak to the fact that you work with an ensemble cast, because it's something that, like, what we were talking about it. A lot of people feel like it's a new thing, or it was like special to that, but people used to do it a lot before,
right?
The old studio system and theater and things like that.
When they had contracts.
Yeah. So how do you approach that? Like, because it seems like that could also, like you said, be a challenge sometimes. Is like, I've literally dressed you for however many years, and I've made you look different. How do you keep that going?
Well, a big thing is Ryan Murphy, obviously. I always feel in interviews, I'm like, Ryan, because it's the truth. He's got a hand in the scripts. Often the time he is the writer,
right,
or works obviously directly with the writers. So they all have their own vision boards and such. And so Ryan always is my leading point, my jumping off point. But a lot of times he'll say, inspire me, show me something. And I always start out talking to the actor first, and talking like Dylan McDermott. He's great with great ideas. Or he might come in and say, "There's this hat. I love this hat. Let's build on this hat." But with the ensemble cast, I feel it's communication is the biggest thing, because like Kathy Bates might. I might have this great idea, and Kathy will come in and go, "I think it's too masculine for this character." I'm like, okay, well, let's work with that. Let's or it is masculine. Let's like on American Horror Story, Apocalypse. We felt it needed to be a bit masculine because she was a robot, but we didn't fully know that quite yet. But so then when Ryan decided to chop her hair off and make it black, we're like, all right, we're going to switch this.
Now we can switch it up,
and we're going to do this black military jacket. And so there's pieces. It might be Ryan will start with a wig, like Jessica Lange in The Politician. He's like, this is how I wanted her to look. Here's the wig. And we're like, all right, we're going to build on that.
And then you build off of it. So it feels like there's a lot of anchor points, but also what I'm hearing is that you guys are truly collaborative.
Correct. The whole team, the whole ensemble.
That's what it feels like. Because I think one of the things that, like, you have Ryan as like the hub, right? Like the anchor. And then all the creative departments are kind of spanned out or splayed out. But the one thing that I've really loved about watching all of these shows is that you can tell that the art direction, the costume, the makeup, the hair, the special effects stuff, all of it is working together, which sometimes can be really difficult, especially like I work on a lot of big movies and it's like everyone kind of splays out.
Yeah.
But it feels like you guys really contain it because it shows up in the work. Like the costumes aren't overpowering the set's not, like it's all working together.
Yeah, so when you said like an ensemble cast, we also have an ensemble crew.
Right.
We all have been working together for years.
It's
and
wonderful.
Like one of my first emails is to Aaron Kruger McCash, who's the head makeup, and and hair that moves around a little bit now that there's so many shows. But like Chris Clark, Michelle Seglia, Monty Hot, all of them have been circling around, and so I make sure that it's different on Pose in New York, but everybody here. We all touch it, right? If they say, hey, Ryan just sent me this picture of a wig, thought you should know, or I'll send them a note saying, hey, Ryan's really wanting to go on this color green, heads up, or as soon as we do fittings and Ryan's approved, I do boards and send them directly to hair and makeup so they can quickly, I'll be like, he wants hats all the time, and I know you're wigging her, so let's keep that in mind. Or as soon as you get a head measurement with wig, can you give it to us because we're having hats made, and I don't want to show up and the hat doesn't fit because the wig is bigger than we thought or whatever.
I love
we
that
all work
entire
really closely
process
together. And I'm always nagging our production designer and art director and set decorator going, what color's the floor? What color are the walls? What, and they send samples all the time so that we're all on board, and especially on Ratched because the color of the clothes were a direct effect on the color of the walls, the peach with the green, and we really all worked closely together, all departments, on the color of that, and on Hollywood as well.
I have to give a shout out to the entire crew, or all of you guys working together, because often, I watch things from that lens. I'm looking at production design and costume and all of those things, and when it's done right, it's done right. And I feel like often you can tell when the crew works well together, and that's something that is a testament to you all.
Yeah,
I think it's great
thanks.
because you can tell.
They're awesome. And I also say a shout out as well to special effects,
Yes.
makeup, because there's a lot of it in Ryan Murphy shows, and it really depends. Okay, is it going to be a reveal, or are you going to do a plate? And now the outfit has to be moved around a little bit because he can't have such a high shirt, or the arm's coming off, and how are you guys having it come off here? Are you having it come off here? Do we need to rig the sleeve up here, down here? We work very closely on all the special effects to make sure that they're given what they need, and we're given a heads up that we're going to need 10 of those jackets now because the whole sleeve's coming off or whatever. It's like that communication.
Now, something I want to talk about too is I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because we're talking about your work and style in your work. Let's talk about your personal style. How do you infuse, or how do you come up with the looks that you have when you go out or when you're presenting yourself, in your personal, how do you present yourself? What goes into your mind, or is it just you?
#mood.
Yeah.
It's what kind of mood?
Mood.
A lot of it's how much effort do I want to put into it? When I'm working, when the Emmys are on, when in the middle of a big project, I get overwhelmed because I want to look good, but at the same time I'm exhausted. So it's really how much effort do I want to put into it is where it starts. It was sometimes I'm inspired by a piece. One year there was an orange Christian Dior turban that I found at a vintage store down in Orange, elsewhere, the fabulous vintage store down there. And I grabbed it thinking, I'm going to wear this. If I ever get nominated again, I'm going to wear it. And then got nominated and had it, but I'm like, what do I pair an orange turban with? And
there we go.
The fabulous Doris at The Way We Wore.
Hi,
I
Doris.
went in with the turban and said, help. And we dug through a bunch of stuff and realized white was the best thing. But she's kind of my go-to for when I need something to wear. There's a ton of them. I don't mean to only give her a shout-out. But
yeah.
I can, when I'm under the gun, I know I can pop in the door and find something, always some treasure there. Sometimes for the Emmys for Versace, I wanted to just give a shout out, so I wore this studded skirt and just went kind of I don't know what the term would be, but it was definitely a stretch for me because I don't usually wear sexy or edgy. It's usually more, I don't know, whatever you'd call that, but and I just wanted to have fun with it. And then with the tattoos, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But so it just really just what mood I'm in and how much time I have to put into it. But I do love to represent what we do. I love to, I guess that's the best way to say it. I love to represent our craft.
Well, it's also just kind of fun, right? It's just it's a personal love of yours. So it's fun to represent and kind of do something fun. I just wanted to put that out there just because I know that there's so many times where we see you like either on a red carpet or something where I'm just like, where did she come up with that? Like, just beautiful, just fun, but also it comes through in your personality, I think.
I think a big part of it is everything I've been wearing. These pieces are all vintage.
Yeah.
And I've always had that massive obsession and love for vintage. And there's so many great resources here in town. Like I could call, that was from Richard Wainwright, who's the founder of both Pickwick Bowl and A Current Affair. And he has a store called Newfound. And I can also just call him up and say, I'm coming in, and he'll grab a few things, and I'm out the door in 10 minutes.
Wow. So it's just like, and then kind of picking how you feel.
Yeah.
Okay. So now another question, which would be, I want to talk about, let's talk to the next generation of designers or like people that are coming in. Like, do you have any advice for them in terms of how they can prepare or what they should be looking at or like just kind of what they should be trying to like learn in order to be a designer?
Well, I mean, I don't have like a magic recipe or anything, but I would say honestly, to get like a little bit woo-woo spiritual, it really has to start from the inside. Like, this is what I want no matter what.
Right.
I'm going to find my way. This is, like, for me, once I got that bug, there was no stopping me. Like, I don't mean there was no stopping me. What I mean is the course was set, and the universe just whoosh, all of a sudden I was doing it. Like, but there was an intent. Like when I met Carol Ramsey and I started working, I was just like, I don't know what this is, but I really want to do it. So it has to just be like, I love to, it can't be like, I love to shop and I want to shop, or,
right.
You know, maybe I want to do it. That's fine to start there, but it has to really be like, this is what I'm put on this planet to do.
Yeah. there's been some guests that we've had too. I think that's an echoed sentiment. It's like there has to be that like that spark of like, I love to do this and like I wouldn't want to do anything else, and you have to love it over the other things.
Yeah,
like you,
especially if you're spending money on it to go to school.
Correct.
You know, that helps.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because then my own son went to college and is doing something he never studied. So I don't want to say that, you know, and I'm not doing anything that I went to school for. So I want to make sure I'm not being a hypocrite there.
No, because I think that what ends up happening, especially with students, it's like you're growing and you're learning and you're trying to figure things out. And oftentimes we do shift. I think the thing that I've heard from like what you're talking about, even in terms of like kind of like getting into something and then it kind of steamrolling, is there's an incredible amount of like kind of knowing that you want to be in this. You also surrounded yourself and kind of immersed yourself in the process. So you said, you know what, I'm going to learn everything I can about this. I need to be around it. I need to be on set. I need to pay attention.
Who can I meet? What questions can I ask? Yeah.
Also the self-starting thing. I think one of the things that I find that people struggle with sometimes is self-starting, meaning like being a self-starter. So it's like if Carol had you go pick out something and then you also give her some more options, or you try to like figure something out and now you're doing it. It's like that self-starting, like if you don't have work, make work, is a really important skill to have. So
during this COVID shenanigans, I did mentor a few people, you know, through Zoom and FaceTime, whatever. And what I would recommend is, you know, everybody's sitting around going, well, there's nothing I can do. But like every week, pick a different decade. Okay, this week I'm going to watch all movies from the 60s. Yeah. And then it could be you pick it because of a director or like a designer. Like say you're going to Theone, whatever designer. I'm going to look at all 60s films this week, and then I'm going to just sit and think about what each style, or I'm going to watch all Woody Allen films, or just start educating yourself and watching what the designer does, how from early 60s to the late 60s, how did it change? Watch the hemline, watch the, you know, it's just immerse yourself in it. It's not only educational and fun and entertaining, but you will, it's just mind-opening. I love to do it. Like for one week I watched all Ginger Rogers, like kind of dance movies.
That's wonderful.
Right before I started the prom, I'm like, I just want to watch that magic of those dance numbers and how the clothes move, or for Hollywood too. It really helped to watch those movies because the way women walked and talked and where that hemline always was. And you can look at the research on paper, but when you watch an actual movie shot in the 40s and you watch the way that everything was impeccably tailored and there's nothing like it. And use this time to educate yourself on it, whether you went to school for it or not. It's both educational and so entertaining.
And the segue, I want to do that too, because you just brought up something that I wanted to ask, which was you were talking about the movement and dance and singing. So you did Glee, and you also did a lot of these projects now where they require that. How do you approach that? What are the challenges of approaching it, knowing you're going to have an actor that's doing heavy dancing or singing or both, or like?
So Glee was my first experience with it, and there was a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of poor bleeding feet. And or like what I learned quickly was, you know, Brian loved sequins and shiny bits, but then every time a poor male dancer had to pick up that girl dancer and the hands and the arms got all cut up, I'm like, oh yeah, well, we won't do that again. So I did have to learn a lot of big, hard lessons. Well, but the dancers did, the actors. But for me, you know, definitely feet first for the dancers. Like, what can I do with that look? Because they need to wear, like on the prom, they needed to wear really low heels because of the dance number. And the choreographer really wanted them to wear sneakers, and I understood that. But for me, it ruined the line. But I didn't want to torture the dancers. So we, LaDuca made a lot of the dance shoes for us. And a lot of the dancers, of course, had been dancing for years and years. And we're like, don't worry, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We could fudge on the guys, but the girls especially, when we put them in the little dresses, we gave them options, and they were like, let's do the heels because we like the look of it. And then our producers were very compassionate and understanding and let us have a couple extra costumers to be in the wings to get the girls out of their shoes, to get them in some comfortable things between turnarounds and setups and such. But some of the dancers were like, if I take the shoes off, I won't get them back on.
Yeah, like they're not, you're like, just leave it and I'll just deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, professional dancers are my heroes.
Yeah, they're pretty incredible.
They just give it all.
They're athletes. They're
I
athletes.
was like, and with Meryl and Nicole for the prom, we had shoes built by LaDuca.
Can you give let's just do a quick backstory. Like, what is the prom about, or what is the prom?
So it's based on the Broadway play that won the Tony, and about a girl in Indiana who wanted to go to prom with her date, which was another girl. And rather than the community saying yes and inviting it, they had prom canceled. And it hit the news.
Yeah.
And the four Broadway actors who were experiencing a lull in their careers needed a cause, and they were scrolling through their phones and found like what's trending, and they said, "Oh, here's our cause," and they took a bus to this town and tried to help, and caused a lot of trouble.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was fun. I mean, it was a great experience for me.
And you guys just filmed that, so you just...
Yeah, we just finished it in July.
In July, okay. And
we would have finished it in March.
but now, yes. I think that one of the things that you said too when you kind of put everything together is that I want to touch on it really quickly. Do you have any style icons or people, because you were talking about watching like, you know, all of the old kind of films and the dance numbers and stuff. Are there things personally that inspire you, like, or like filmmakers or things that you just really like kind of pull from or draw from?
I have this fascination with Tilda Swinton because she'll do it all. She'll do the little independent film. She is also an artist, and she has a good compass for causes. She isn't your typical movie star, although she is a movie star, and I love her personal style as well. But I love her European sensibilities as well. Other than that,
have you ever worked with her?
No.
It's just
Inspiration, gosh.
I feel like
Can't
you
think
do a
of
lot of
anything.
it's more
How
of a
boring
general
of me to
question.
not have some
No,
stellar answers
no,
for
no, no.
you.
So, I mean, because sometimes, like you said too, because you jump from category to category, you're often immersed in something, and it's like a big. I try to explain it to people even conceptually. It's like you take on this thing. It's like a big thing that you're carrying, and you're trying to get your inspiration out, and it's like all encompassing and all everything. And then it's done, and you
Yeah.
kind of take a break, and then you pick up something else. So
It's almost like for me that is more music than people. Like
yes,
music is huge in my life and huge in my inspiration, and I always have it playing, and I'm always, um, you know, using music to inspire me. So like, if I'm having trouble coming up with something, I'll go for a walk in nature and put my headset on and just listen to music and literally like the trees come alive and I don't know how to explain it, but it is my way of disconnecting the brain, not thinking so much and letting the inspiration
insight.
come.
Well, one thing that I wanted to talk about, or at least to bring back into, because we're talking about your inspiration, and something that I wanted to have people or to give you the opportunity to share was in 2011. We've been showing this image. You did a temporary hair tattoo. So explain what the meaning behind that was and what that was about.
So I was right there on my 8th round of chemo, and I got an Emmy nomination, and my phone started blowing up, and my friends were texting, going, "Congratulations!" And again, Erin Kruger McCash, I mention her a lot because she's one of my heroes.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the first to text and say, "Lulu, what are you going to do with your hair?" Because I was bald.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I kind of want to do a tattoo." Do you think, because her husband Mike is an artist and he does a lot of tattoos for TV and film,
Right.
could he maybe do like a rose for me? And at the time, Eve, I'm going to butcher her name. She was a big model, Eve Solel. She had tattooed a rose on her head, so it wasn't that exact thing, but I wanted something like that. And she's actually is an inspiration. She was the DJ for the Guild Awards for years.
Right. Okay.
She's awesome. And so Erin had her husband contact me, Mike McCash. I said, I kind of want it to look like a 1920s hairdo. And he sketched this out. And then the back is like really ornate as well. And then saran wrapped my head. And because I didn't want to go. This was literally September. This was about a month and a half before I had to have my double mastectomy.
Okay.
So I want to go and I want to look pretty and sexy and proud and not look sick.
Yeah.
And I wanted one day where I didn't have to think about cancer.
Yeah.
And celebrate the artistry of everybody and of my life and my gratitude for life. So that's where that came from. And then the one on the back, it was my 5-year anniversary. So I contacted Mike and said, I don't want to do another head tattoo. I don't want to shave my head. And he came up with a couple ideas, and this was one. And also from the front, it looks like the tattoo's holding up the dress.
That's awesome. Yeah, this was this story I wanted you to share because it was personal to me as well. So most people don't know, Lou actually helped me. My mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, and Lou helped me through it. So one of the things that I was struggling with, and I kind of told her about it, and she shared her story with me, which I didn't know about the tattoo and all of those things. So when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And to give you guys an insight into Lou as a person, which is why I said what I said at the beginning of this.
Are we going to have a roast?
Yeah, yeah. No, not a roast. It's actually something that I carried with me that was really nice. She won't remember because this is the way Lou is just in general. But there was one day where I ran into her randomly. She was in her golf cart and she was going to do a fitting. I think it might have been for Glee, and I can't remember exactly what it was for. And she had a shirt in her hand, and we ran into each other, and I was going to work.
Probably not in plastic.
Yeah. I was going, yep, not in plastic, just running in, and we started to talk, and we had talked about things, and so she remembered that that I had this thing, and she asked about my mom, which was really nice and really personable, and I talked to her, and my mom actually got through breast cancer. She had a double mastectomy, all of those things. So it was like she was telling me about the the things you have to take and all of this stuff, and I was kind of struggling with it, but it was good to have someone to talk to. personally, and also someone that could kind of tell me like she's gonna get through it, it's gonna be fine. And at that point, we hadn't even really worked together. It was just kind of like a moment. But the thing about it is Lou sat and talked to me that day for about an hour in front of this door that she was going into with the shirt.
Missed the fitting?
You
I
missed,
don't know.
yeah, yes. And so then
kidding.
finally somewhere, I'm just talking to her and we're going on and on. And she says, oh, I was going into a fitting. And I was like, Lou, go to your fitting. And she's like, it's fine. This was more important. And that human quality is why I feel the way I do and why I said what I said, because it wasn't about where she was going. It was about the life, and it was about the moment, and it was about being in the moment. And I took that with me. So thank you.
No, I do remember that. And I'm happy for your
Yeah.
mom.
She is fine. And and she actually, Lou became one of her heroes too. She was like, I should do a tattoo.
But I do want to say for anybody out there that is watching that if you're going through it or have someone that's going through it, that it's a lot to process, and to always reach out to somebody that's gone through it. I have a whole protocol on my computer. I can send it to you because it's really hard to go through it. And at that same time, as you and I talked with your mom, if you can focus on thriving, focus on being well and not on being sick, and I guess you can say that for all of us going through COVID. If we could focus on getting through this rather than how are we going to get through this, it's a difference between having hope and not having hope. And it's hard to say when we don't have paychecks and we don't know what our future is. But if you focus on that part of it, that's what you'll get more of. If we can focus on, all right, what can I do today to brighten my day? Well, I'm going to watch some Ginger Roger musical.
Yes. See, and that's a good place for us to end to. I think for everyone listening, the inspiration behind a lot of things, and you can talk about all of the bigger things or all of the, you can get mixed up in things and we tend to lose our way. But I think the main focus sometimes is just focusing on positivity. That's something that Lou does really well. Lou is also very humble. So when you see her win, she feels almost incredibly uncomfortable to not name every single person that was a part of the crew or, in helping with these things. And I think that that's kind of how she carries herself in life. So what oozes off of her is inspiration for art and life, but also just an appreciation for life, an appreciation for family. So these are all great things. And I think that everyone in our industry, everyone in our industry, I'm making her really nervous right now. Everyone in our industry needs to hear this and take note of it. It's not about the accomplishments. It's not about where you are. It's about life and about being kind and about being empathetic. And Lou just is our leader in that. So
and a sense of humor.
Yeah,
helps.
and a sense of humor. Yes. So I want you guys to really pay attention to that, and also know that just from here and seeing all that she's accomplished, everyone comes at this career from their own way, their own path. So some people study, some people get into it in a different way, but it doesn't matter. Just do your best and do the work. And that's what I'm saying. So thank you, Lou.
I'm always incredibly uncomfortable with interviews, especially on camera, but you made it very easy. Thank you.
No problem.
Except for that last bit.
Had to put her on the spot. So let's say I want to give a thank you for having Lou with us today. I also want to give a shout out to Designing Hollywood and Marilyn Vance.
Yes.
Miss Marilyn Vance.
I'm so thrilled
for
to
this
be
platform
here
to talk. And I want to give a shout out to Eddie Marks at Rag Van Rentals for being our sponsor. Lou, is there any place that people can find you or like on social media or anything or like just following your work?
Well, most people that know me know I don't do social media. Someday I'll hire someone to do it for me. I'm just, you know what? There's too many amazing things in life to do than for me to sit. And I mean, I love everybody else's IGs and Facebooks and everything. I want to be in the present moment right here. And
So follow her work. Yes, follow her work.
There's a minimal on Instagram. I don't really do Facebook. And
yes.
I don't know. Say hello to me.
Yes. She's an in-person gal. And I guess that's
I have an Instagram. I think it's Eyrich Lou, but I don't know.
Okay, so there we go. We will look it up and we'll post the link. And you can find me on Instagram at Phil_Boutté. So thank you for joining
You
us.
have a fabulous
Yeah,
voice.
thank you very much. And we'll see you again. Thanks, Lou.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to our sponsor, Eddie Marks with Ragvan.com. Ragvan is Hollywood's favorite place to rent fully equipped, high-quality trailers used by the entertainment industry to transport costumes and garments to and around filming sets in Hollywood. Also, thank you to our viewers. Be sure to follow Designing Hollywood Podcast on social media and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Deezer, and our YouTube channel for complete past and current episodes.